Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome back to part two of my tutorial for the coding assignment associated with chapter 14 of the Severance Python for Everybody book. And in part two, uh, we're going to take that module that we created in part one, and we're going to create another Python file, and in, and it's going to run the reports. So, we have a starter file that runs the reports using tuples. Okay, in my tutorial version, it's river miles less. In your real exercise version, it's the country population. So let's open up river miles less, which again is one of our starter files. And we're actually going to be acting on this code. You're going to create the equivalent of this in your exercise 2. So if you're someone who follows along and then tries to clone the code, well, that might be something that you're going to do. A thing to remember, though, is you might just want to watch me do this and then do the same thing with do the same kind of cloning from your starter file. Okay? So this uses tuples. If we run it, it's called river miles less, and we tell it that that we want to run river miles data.text, and this version only gives us two reports. It gives us in the name order and then in the length order. Okay, and it does it with tuples. Okay, so what do we need to do? Well, we need to use our custom class instead of tuple, right? And we're going to need to change the names of things. Okay, so for instance, I don't want to have a class-based version of this where the variable that holds the list of the data object is called river miles tuples. I'm probably going to want to just call it rivers. Okay, and likewise, the names of the methods, or the functions in this case, get river miles tuples. I'm probably not going to say this. What I usually call these are instances. So get river miles instances, or maybe just get river instances. We'll see. Okay. So what I can do with this, the general approach that you want to take is you want to use the refactor rename. So I typically start at the top. If I were starting with this starter file, I would copy it over, right? So I'm not going to do it all for you, but I'll do enough to get you started. So I want to copy this river miles list, and I'm trying to create one that's called river miles less using basic class. So using basic class. So we're not using tuples anymore. Okay. All right. So I'm going to need some kind of import to get access to my class. And where's my class? Well, it's in my basic rivers.py. So I'm just going to add an import up here. I'm going to say from my basic rivers import river. It's that easy. Okay, so now I have imported the version I want. I didn't import it from my bare bones rivers. That's not really the one that we want to test. You can fool around with that, but that's not really part of um, the the assignment. That was just a demonstration. Okay, so we've got this, and then we say, okay, let's start to change the names of things. So river mile tuples. I'm going to refactor rename this, and I'm going to call it rivers. Okay, typically when I have a river class and um, I have a list of them, I just use a name like rivers. Okay, and then let me hold on 1 second and see what I put in the ready baked solution. Be right back. Well, it turns out I did a good job. So what do I got? Let's make this code a little bit bigger so you can see it, and close this down here so you can see our code better. So do I want to call this get river miles tuples anymore? No, I think I want to call this get river instances. Okay, so refactor, rename, get river instances. Okay, so are we refactoring this program? Okay, so there are times when you do a refactor that you have to come down here and confirm do refactor. It gives you kind of a preview. So I say do refactor, and now it's changed this to get river instances, and that's good. So I guess you could say that this is a refactor. I mean, we have a version that works with the input that uses tuples, and we want to get the pretty much the same output in the version that uses river class instances. I need another blank line here. But the fact is, if you look at the specifications we're doing for the exercise, we're creating a third listing. So whenever you're increasing the functionality, it's more than a refactor. But what you could do, for instance, is you could refactor this to produce the two reports you're already producing, right? And then you could add to that. So you do a refactor, and that's truly the same functionality. It should give you essentially the same output. Okay, and then you add the third report, which is really adding functionality. Okay, now get river instances looks good. Print report. Now let's go down here. These river mile tuples, what do we want to call this? Well, what is this? This is a sorted list of rivers. So I'm going to call this refactor rename. Oh, it's interesting. We didn't get the whole thing. So refactor rename. So I'm going to call this these sorted rivers. I like that better. It's a better name than we had before, I think. Okay, good. And report titles is still a good parameter name. Okay, that's good. Let's see what else we can do. So the names of things. Get river instances, print report, We've got better parameter names here. By miles. Oh, okay, this is the one that is going to get in one instance. Okay, well, let's call it that. Let's rename that. Instead of river miles tuple, let's just call this river instance. It's an instance of the river class. Okay, that looks good. All right. Now we're going to have to change around some code, okay, because we're not working with tuples. Like, for instance, while we're down here on the by miles, okay, let's look at that. So, do we use index numbers with class instances? No, we don't. We use the dot notation. Okay, so we can say that we want river instance dot what's the name of the field? Okay, we're doing it by miles. So it's not called miles, it's called length. That's the name of the field. Okay. Now, should we change the name of this from by miles to by length? Well, we could. Okay, we're not changing the title of the report though, so we'll leave it as by miles. Okay, that's good. All right, how about when we go to print? Well, we're not doing the tuples anymore. Okay, so down in here we say for river miles tuple in these sorted rivers, let's rename that one. That should be river instance. All right. So let's call this one river instance. Okay, that looks good. And we change the names down here. Now, are we going to use index numbers? No, you don't. You use the dot notation. The first one is a dot name. And the second one is dot length. All right, now we've fixed that one up. Okay, so we're getting things out of the list pretty well. That looks good. How about when we put them in? Okay, well, it turns out that we still got some bad names and a little bit bad logic in here. We're creating when we're creating the list of the data facts, well, these are not tuples anymore. So let's call it, instead of my river miles tuple, let's just call it my rivers. Okay, refactor, rename, my, go to the back, my rivers. I like that. That's a good refactor. Okay. So now we say for line and in file, we have river miles as string. Okay. That's okay. It's the length, but miles as string is not a real change. Okay, so that's okay. So my rivers append. Well, we don't want to build a tuple anymore by just surrounding it in parens, but we do want to call our constructor. So it's called river, and we want to pass it. How about we do this? How about we call this, instead of river, how about refactor this to name? Okay. And how about miles as string? We refactor that to be called length as string. Okay. So we say that we want to append a new river instance. We're calling the constructor, passing in the name and an int for the length as string. That looks pretty good. Now, will that work? Okay, we've pretty much made all the changes we want to make. Okay, I just want to point out that there's a bug implicit in this that we haven't found yet, and I'm just going to run it with the test data, and then you'll see where the bug is. Okay, so we're going to run it. Okay, and we're going to run it with river miles data.text. Okay, and it says that we called rivers dot sort, and it says the less than comparison is not supported between instances of river and river. Now, it turns out that tuples can be compared to each other right out of the box. Okay, they're compared to each other. They compare the first fields. If they're tied, they go to the second. If there's a third, they keep going down and tie breaking. Okay. Class instances have no sort behavior until you do one or two things. One is you can provide a sort key, in which case that's fine. Two is you can actually implement a method that provides less than functionality. You can provide less than, greater than, or equal to functionality. There are some of the dunder methods that are the kind of are not called explicitly, but are called implicitly in times like this when you want to sort. If you've got a basic class, you're probably not going to implement those kind of methods. In fact, we've decided that we're not going to. Okay? Well, then what can you do? Well, then you just can't call this a sort without providing a key. Okay, so how do we provide the key down here for length in miles order? Well, that was pretty easy to do. We created a function by miles. Let's go find that. Okay, and it returns the river instance length. Let's clone that. Okay, and let's create up ahead of this a function called by name. Okay, and we're going to call it the sort code is going to call it with a river instance. In this case, we return the name. Pretty good. All right. Now we have to go change that code. So we can't say just a sort because it doesn't know how to sort these kinds of instances. Well, we can say key equals by name. And you got it. Now it wants to put the parens in here. This is a failure of the PyCharm IDE. You'll notice that when we pass these, we're not calling the function. We're passing the name of the function so sort can call it. So we don't, when you pass a function, you don't call paren. You're not calling it. You're passing it. You're passing the name of the function. So just key equal by name, no paren. Okay. Now this should fix that bug. Let's give it another run. Let's call this, let's run river miles data.text. And let's look. Did I get the same report that I've been getting? Yeah, I got the river name order and I got the length in miles order. So I've refactored this thing and I've tested. I tested it. I had to inspect the output. Okay, we don't have a typical kind of semi-automated unit test that we've been doing for the class itself, but for people often refer to this kind of program as client code of the river class. It's code that uses the river class. It's its client. Okay, so for a client code class like this, testing by inspection, that's about the best we can do right now. Okay, now that we've refactored this, let's remember that we wanted to have a third version. And what is that? Well, we want the same length in miles, but we want it in descending order. So let's do this. How do you reverse the order of the sort? Well, you just add the keyword parameter reverse equals true. It takes a Boolean value. Okay, and now we want to add the word descending in all caps. Descending length in miles order. It's all you got to do. This is a pretty well designed program, so extending the functionality was kind of a walk in the park. Okay, so let's run it and make sure we get our third listing. Okay, and it's going to be river miles data dot text, and let's look at this. Okay, so the name order, length in miles order, well, ascending length in miles, descending length in miles, it's the opposite order. It's beautiful. So we were able to expand the functionality because of the way we designed this code. We were able to expand the functionality. So I really did change all the code. I didn't even bring things in an already baked version. Okay. You want to do a good job on this one, on your version of this one, which is instead of be calling My Basic Rivers, it's going to be called My Basic Countries, right? You want to do a good job on this because, I mean, in terms of that's what the import is called. The name of this is actually River Miles Lists using basic class, right? That's what it's called. Okay. And I think I put another comment in it. And I'm going to take this out of my already baked version. My comment says this version uses the basic version of the river class. Okay? Now, when you get to part 4 of this, okay, I'm going to show you that the only thing that you're going to need to change in order to create the part 4 program is going to be the import statement. The rest of the code is just going to work. So part 4 is going to be like shooting fish in a barrel, but we're not there yet. Okay, so that's part 2, right? So, and this is where you typically would begin with the client code. Okay, we're using a basic version of the river data holder class. The client code is pretty straightforward. Okay, and again, how does it get the data? Not by calling getters and setters, which is not really the Pythonic way. Okay, it just accesses the files. So when it wants to, when we're down here printing the report, when we want to get the name, we just we just access the name field. When we want to get the length, we access the length field. Down here, when we're putting together the sort keys, when we want to get the name, we access the name field. When we want to get the length, we access the length field. No getters involved. So this code that we have here now is Python code at the basic kind of level. This is the Pythonic way to do it. Okay, so the Pythonic way is not using explicit getters and setters called get name and set name, or get length and set length. That that practice was followed by some people at some point, and it's now for the Pythonistas, it's out of fashion. Okay, and we'll show you what you'd want to do when you further evolve your classes, and it's not going to be anything that breaks this code. We're going to further evolve the class to provide some more sophistication, but we're not going to change the client code at all, except for importing the other version of the class. You're going to love it. I love it. We all love it. And that's enough loving it. I'm going to say bye until we get to part 3. Okay? Bye-bye.